go forward and not just win this election, but based upon his blueprint, win this election and fundamentally change Washington, D.C. back to limited government. So thank you, Janesville. Thank you for And by the way, not only are you leading on the federal level here in Wisconsin, but the courage of one man and his lieutenant governor, one woman, who stepped up, did what was necessary, took the flak, stood tall, led this country on the fundamental changes that are necessary to get limited government at the state and local level. And here's a hats off to your great governor and lieutenant governor. This is my oldest, our daughter Elizabeth, who is traveling with me today. And with Elizabeth, I don't make Elizabeth stand behind me and look adoringly at me for the entire speech. She can sit and look adoringly at me for the entire speech. We've been traveling throughout the day here, having another wonderful day in a great state. I mean, I got to tell you, Glenn, I want to thank very much for his endorsement and support. He was in Hartford today. We were in the mine shaft and in Hartford, yep. And we had our share of cheese curds and a whole bunch of other things there. And, we were having fun. And I got to tell you, I want to thank him for his endorsement today. And I want to thank all the other folks who spoke with us, the state representatives, Ambassador Shakespeare, others who come out here to show the flag for us. I'm very, very appreciative of that. And we've just had a wonderful time. Glenn mentioned Louisiana. And I got to tell you, if you haven't been to Louisiana, it is a unique place in the country. It's just so different. It's such a unique culture. It's such a wonderful culture with the Cajun and the French influence and you know, the whole nature of the state just being very different than the rest of America. But yet, just the wonderful spirit of the people down there. It was just amazing. They come to Wisconsin, very different culture. You know, brats and beer and cheese curds. You know, I went up to Lambeau Field and threw some passes on Lambeau Field and tried the Lambeau leap. Actually, I was going to try the Lambeau leap, but that wall's hard. I don't know about what you do this or not. And it's a lot higher than you think it is. These guys are real athletes. I am not. And so, but it's been, you know, we went bowling in Sheboygan. We just have had a wonderful time. And the same, you know, it's two different, completely in many respects, different cultures, but the same spirit. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people just in both states who said, you know, with sincerity and with a real great, you know, small town feeling of thank you for coming to our town. You know, thank you for being here. Thank you for thinking about us and listening to us, caring about what we think, caring about, you know, the values that we want to stand up for. When I talk to crowds here in Wisconsin and deliver the message that I do, when I talk about, you know, the greatness of the American people, talk about the important values that found our country, and why freedom, ultimately, of all the issues that are involved in this election, ultimately the biggest issue, the one that is really threatened and that is really the cause of all the other problems that we're facing in our nation, which is that the lights of freedom very well may go out if we do not win this election here in this race in 2012. The same reaction. Two very different groups of people, but the same reaction. It's what reminds is how diverse America is, how wonderfully diverse it is. Yet, there are things that bring us together. There are things that bind us. Because American is not an ethnicity, not a race. We're all hyphenated Americans, right? We all have we're diverse, we have different cultures from which we come from. Even within our own states and our own communities, different accents and the way we say things and do things. But there is something that makes us American. It's not what we look like or what we talk like, but it is the basic foundational principles of our country. America is about an ideal. And that ideal, in my opinion, rests in our founding documents. For a long time, we've heard this talk about American exceptionalism. The reason it came back is President Obama, early in his career, was asked as president whether he believed in American exceptionalism, and his answer was, well, I believe in American exceptionalism like the British believe in British exceptionalism and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism. Basically what he was saying is, oh, we're all homers, we like the home team. You see, that's someone who doesn't understand America. A year ago, your fine congressman put together that budget that talked about doing the things he suggested this time too, which is to take entitlement programs. All of these means-tested entitlement programs that under the 10th Amendment should be run and managed by the states, not by the federal government. Let's get these programs out of Washington, D.C. Let's end these federal entitlements like I did when I was in the United States Senate and helped author the bill and manage the welfare reform bill on the floor of the Senate that ended aid to families with dependent children. We want to do the same thing now with food stamps and Medicaid. We list a whole bunch of these programs. Well, when President Obama gave his response to the Ryan budget, Paul Ryan sitting right there, he excoriated him and the budget. Rather bad form as far as I was concerned. Not something that a president of the United States should do, in my opinion. But he did it. And he did it with this phrase. One particular phrase that, well, as you can imagine, sticks in my craw. Because I remembered it to this day. He said this, listing all of the entitlement programs that Paul Ryan wanted to change. And he said this, America is a better country because of these commitments. I will go one step further, he read. America was not a great country until these commitments. That's how President Obama sees America. A country that is not exceptional, a country that was not great until the government took money from some, decided who better deserved that money, and then redistributed it to those that would now become dependent upon the government and vote for those who continue to provide them those resources. That, in the eyes of President Obama, is what makes America great. But of course, that's not what you believe makes America great. It's not what your ancestors believed made America great. It's not what millions of people around the world who came to this country or want to come to this country believe what makes America great. It's not why my grandfather, who came here in 1925, it's not why he thought he needed to leave Mussolini's Italy, fascist Italy, where the government would dictate his life and his values. No, he came to America in 1925, left a good job in a beautiful little idyllic mountain town, and came to America. Why? Because of all the government benefits that Barack Obama said made America great? Those benefits did not exist in 1925. There were no government benefits, save one, freedom. And that was enough. Winston Churchill gave another wise Churchill quote. He said, the debate is not about the future. The debate is about the past. Think about it. It's really true. The way Barack Obama sees America as a broken country that was unfair, unjust, discriminatory, and still is in large part today, as he gives speeches about the 99 versus the 1 and income inequality and the ability and desire to redistribute wealth. Did you hear him talk about any opportunity to divide America along either class or race or ethnicity, whatever it is. He takes the opportunity to separate us, to remind us of our differences. Because that's how he sees America. Not as e pluribus unum, not as out of many one, but a country that is broken, that needs to be unified by a powerful government that makes everybody get the same. Because then it's fair. That is Barack Obama's vision for America. It is why he proposes the bills he proposes. It is why he whispered off camera, he thought. Saying, just give me a little space. We'll take care of this after the election. We'll take care of it. We know the candidate Barack Obama, what he was like. The anti-war government, America was a source for division around the world. That what we were doing was wrong, and we needed to pull out, and we needed to pull back. He's done as much as he could. With the prospects of having to get reelected, he cut the defense budget by $500 billion, proposed another $500 billion. You know, the defense budget, that thing that's causing the budget deficit to explode, the defense budget. Just a little history on the defense budget. When I was born, the defense budget was 60% of the federal budget. It is not 60% anymore. It's not 50. It's not 40. It's not 30. It's not 20. It's 17% of the budget. And according to Barack Obama, that's the problem. Whereas the part of the budget that was less than 10% when I was born is now 60%. Entitlements. His solution, add another. Add the biggest one of all, $2 trillion over the next 10 years. How can we afford to do that? We can't unless that defense budget goes down and down and down. So you just wait. Tell your friend Vladimir, we'll be drawing back. We'll be cutting this stuff. We're not going to do any of this. We're going to focus on building the welfare state. We're going to focus on creating government dependency for every single American. And you won't have to worry at all about us. Because we're not going to be involved. Because we're going to have to do what every other great power that decided to become a social welfare state has done, which is to abandon America's mission of being that beacon of hope. That country, that freedom-loving people, courageous people who fought despotism like our founders did. And we always, as Americans, we always ally ourselves. We always feel a kinship with men and women around this world who stand up for liberty, human rights, for the values of our country. In one way or another, we want to help them. We want to at least provide the moral clarity that they can rely upon, that someone will step forward and say, evil is evil. Someone will stand by. Lech Walesa came to Chicago a little over a year ago. And he uttered words similar to what I uttered. And he concluded by saying something to the order of, that America no longer exists. And the world is a darker place. Ladies and gentlemen, this race is about who we are. And what you're going to give her, him, and her, that little baby. What kind of country? You, all of us, we, what are we going to do?
We're into the idiocracy.
What are we going to do now that freedom is being put to the test? Ladies and gentlemen, this is not going to be an easy election. We're going up a president that will have enormous resources. And of course, he will have the mainstream media in his back pocket.
Right.
Trying
Right.
to deflect criticism away from him and his speeches off camera.
That's right.
Trying to apologize for him and make excuses for him and slough off every faux pas that is made by him and his vice president, which is a full-time job in the case of vice president.
Yeah.
And then pick at every conservative participle, every conservative pronoun in every sentence that they say. That's what they do. That's their job, is to deflect attention away from the fundamental issues of this race. And that is who we are and what we will be. Karen and I have been married 21 years. We have 7 children. Ages 20. Ages 20 to 3. This is not the best time for me to be running for president. I've been on the road since the 1st of June, every day but 5. Every day. Because
Thank you.
All
right, Rick.
Like many of you, those of you who stood up and stood tall in 2010, elected a great governor and great members of the legislature here. It just wasn't acceptable to me to sit on the sidelines and let what my grandfather and my dad and mom fought for, struggled for, suffered for. To give me that torch of freedom, I was going to do all I could. And I looked at this race and I said, the reason I'm getting into it, the reason my wife agreed. By the way, when I first asked her, I said, you know, I think feel like I'm being called and I should do this. Karen looked at me and said, God cannot possibly want you to do this. And I said, well, honey, we have to pray about it. She goes, you pray about it. God cannot possibly. Well, after a while, she agreed to pray about it. After a while, she saw the same thing I did. We looked at this race and looked at this field and said, you know, they're good people. They really are. They're good people who want to serve and want to make a difference. But the leading candidate in this race 6 months ago, or 8 months ago, when I decided to do this, was just not the right candidate for the right time on the most important issue of the day. Whatever happens after this election, the one thing that must happen is we must have a clear and convincing mandate to repeal Obamacare. If Obamacare is not repealed, and it will not be easy to repeal, if Obamacare is not repealed, then the government will go from a position where about 40 to 45% of Americans are in some small way or large way dependent upon the federal government for their well-being, some government benefit, to 100% of Americans being dependent upon the government for something fairly critical, your health and your life. And just as importantly, that of everyone you love. Once that happens, the government got you. You are now dependent upon them. They now can tell you what to do, how to do it, as we have seen already, and it hasn't even gone into effect. They say they're giving you a right. What they're giving you is a hook. I was in the green room at Fox. In the green room at Fox 2 days before they passed Obamacare. And I ran into Juan Williams. And I said to Juan, you guys are committing suicide. You're going to get creamed in the 2010 election. And this is what he said to me. Well, let me tell you what the White House just told me. Quote, We believe Americans love entitlements. And once we get them hooked on this entitlement, they will never let it go. That's how they see you. As people to get hooked. People to have on a string that they can pull whenever they want you to do what they tell you to do. That's why this election is about big things. Yeah, it's about unemployment. Obamacare goes into effect, we'll have a lot more unemployment. Obamacare goes into effect, we'll have a huge government. $2 trillion more over the next 10 years. Obamacare goes into effect, we'll have a much slower growing economy. Obamacare goes into effect, we'll have much higher deficits. Obamacare goes into effect, we will have less economic freedom. We will have a weaker national defense because we can't afford it. We will have higher taxes. All of those things are guaranteed. But ultimately, the great tragedy is that we will fulfill, sadly, the great fear that Ronald Reagan talked about when he said that he concerned it one day that he would have to tell his children or his children's children the story about what it was like to live in an America where once men were free. Nobody in this room wants to tell that story. That's why we have to elect somebody who is the best person to put Obamacare on trial, not in the Supreme Court, but in the court of public opinion in America. And who is the best person in this race to do this? Well, let's look at the two candidates that are vying for your vote here in Wisconsin, which, by the way, is shaping up to be one very critical race right here. You folks are in the epicenter of politics and have been for the past 18 months.
You know it.
It's non-stop here. Well, now the world and the United States is going to be watching you even closer as to what you Republicans do next Tuesday. And let's look at the choices you have and what Wisconsin will do to defend freedom. Will you nominate somebody out of Wisconsin who for 20 years ago, when I was a freshman houseman, joined with another courageous governor who followed Scott Walker's lead, John Kasich in Ohio, who stepped up with me when he was on the budget committee, interestingly enough, and we proposed an alternative to Clinton Care, or what Bill Clinton was campaigning on at the time, which was universal health care. It was something called health savings accounts, which was a private sector reform of the healthcare markets, believing in free people, believing in you controlling your healthcare dollars and expenditures, you involving 300 million consumers, all of us being consumers of healthcare, consuming it based upon our desires, our wants, our needs, not limited by what the insurance companies, the employer, or the government believes is best for you. That's been my mantra. I've supported throughout the years free market, private sector health care, equality and tax treatment between employer-provided coverage and those who don't. And by the way, if you don't have employer-provided coverage, you get no tax assistance from the federal government to buy health insurance. For 15 years, I've been advocating for a change in that system. I've got a long, strong, consistent track record on the issue of health care. No wobbles, no bobbles. Believing in free people. Now let's look at the other person, Governor Romney. Governor Romney, when he's governor of Massachusetts, worked with Ted Kennedy and the Democrats in Massachusetts to design a system where the government would mandate every individual in the state of Massachusetts to buy health care. put a fine on them if they didn't, fine their employers if they didn't. Any employer over 10 employees had to do this. They told the insurance plans what plans they had to offer, what the benefits would be. They set up insurance exchanges, government run, where people would buy their insurance from. They exploded the Medicaid budget. So you, in fact, here in Wisconsin are paying for health care in Massachusetts. Yes, you are. You are paying for Romney care. Governor Romney says, well, mine was different than Obamacare. I didn't cut Medicare. You know why Governor Romney didn't cut Medicare? Because Medicare is a federal program and he can't cut Medicare.
Right.
But what he did was steal money from Medicaid. Money that was going disproportionately to Massachusetts unjustly. Ladies and gentlemen, he put forth the single biggest government takeover of healthcare in our country's history. And is proud of it to this day. Said it was right for Massachusetts. It was right for the people in that state, for the government to force you to buy insurance. He was asked that question in the 2008 debates, and he said, mandates are good. I love mandates.
I know.
And then in 2009, after running for president, saying he was a conservative, when Obamacare was being debated, he wrote op-eds, went on television, and advocated for Obama to follow Massachusetts' lead and do what he did. Specifically, to tax people if they don't buy insurance, a mandate. Specifically, to make employers pay if they don't provide insurance. Basically do what Obamacare did, and you've heard President Obama say he has provided the blueprint. Now let me ask you, why in the world, on the most important issue of the day, of having a huge impact on our economy, our deficit, the size of government, and your freedom, both economic freedom and religious freedom, and by the way, Romney Care forced Catholic hospitals to provide the morning after pill, which is an abortifacient, and provides $50 abortions, subsidized abortions, and for low-income, zero-cost abortions. Why would the good people of Wisconsin, who I would think want to win this race, and want Obamacare, and what it will do to this country in so many facets of your life that you talk about every day here in America, why would we nominate someone who is uniquely disqualified to make the argument? If you want a proof and point on it, yesterday began the debates in the Supreme Court, the arguments of the Supreme Court under about Obamacare. I stood at the base of the steps of the Supreme Court and laid out why we needed to nominate somebody who would make Obamacare the front and center issue, because if it is a front and center issue, and I win this election, it will be clear that there is a mandate to repeal Obamacare.